This is the satirical analysis of How to Be Black by Baratunde Thurston by Grace, Lauren, Deja, Wennia, Chris, and Caleb. This entire semester, we have used the definition that satire is an attack by means of a manifest fiction upon discernible historical particulars. In How to Be Black, Thurston attacks the expectations placed on Black people by varying members of society. Thurston notes that this book has no magical properties. It will not turn you black if you are not already black, even if you digest it based on its black cover. This is satirizing the idea that yes, this book was purposely published in February during Black History Month to attract a wide variety of readers. But the idea of the book is not for non-Black people to solve an issue as complex as race by finishing one book. This is to share the experience of him and the Black panel that he has assembled, answering hard questions about race and their personal experiences with them. This is not to solve an issue like race, but it is to gain perspective on those who are different than us.
In the chapter, Where Did You Get That Name? The quote that emphasizes what's being satirized is, my name has served as a perfect window through which to examine my experiences of Blackness. For non-Blacks, it marks me as absolutely, positively Black. However, most of the vocal Nigerians I've met use my name to remind me that I'm not Black. This chapter is satirizing the concept of racial identity and stereotypical expectation of Blackness, and the expectation of being Black that comes from along just your name. In this chapter, when did you first realize you were Black? The quote that emphasizes what's being satirized here is, for many Black Americans, a similar unforgettable experience takes place the day you realize you're Black, and it's not a moment of Black self-awareness. It's probably nevertheless the moment you were introduced to the idea of Black as something negative. This chapter is satirizing the complexities and contradictions of Black identity of education and social environments, critiques the pressure from different communities and how you had to navigate going through school with predominantly white students, and all while maintaining a sense of culture and authenticity. In the chapter, Mama Thurston, the quote that emphasizes what's being satirized is, thanks to my mother, I survived that war. At 12 years old, I was base playing, tofu eating, weekend camping, karate chopping, upper side hating, top grade getting, generally trouble, avoiding agent of Blackness. This chapter is satirizing the complexities within the Black community itself, particularly the rank of class. He critiques the idea that there's only one correct way of being Black. In the chapter, How Black Are You? I am so Black that the other day a Black person asked me, what race am I? That's how Black I am. I was like, excuse me. I apparently am the switchy, changey Black person. People like to see me as white or as Black, I'm so Black that everybody says I look like their cousin. I'm so Black that I don't have to bring up that race card. I am the race card. I'm so Black that I grew up with a Black history bulletin board in my hallway as a child. I'm so Black that my father looks like Malcolm X. That's how Black my stuff is. This chapter is satirizing the awkwardness and misguided interactions between Black and white people, especially in the professional and social setting. He critiques the way of race can be the source of tension and misunderstanding. He also highlights the absurdness of racial stereotypes and assumptions. In the chapter, Do You Know What an Oreo Is? The quote that emphasizes what's being satirized here is, an Oreo is somebody who's Black on the outside and white on the inside. This chapter is satirizing being Black enough and the judgment that is received from other Black people and white people. He critiques, can someone's Blackness be questioned? Does having white friends and being smart or being nerdy make you not Black enough?
In the chapter, Why Are You Wearing That White Man Over Your Heart? I chose the quote, Brother, why are you wearing that man that white men over your heart on page 66. This chapter satirizes racial identity and cultural pressure over Black people, while the guy wearing the shirt shows allegiance to someone who has history of oppressing Black people. Also, that Black Americans always have to try to prove that they are American enough. For the chapter with the title of The U.S. Propaganda Machine, a middle school paper, I chose the quote, "The schools are involved in the propaganda machine through its teaching, or should I say their non-teaching of African and African American history," on page 73. This chapter satirizes the oversimplified versions of explaining narratives in the U.S., where history is taught in a oversimplistic or glorified manner and portrayed as the good guy. Also, the role of education and media. He wrote that paper when he was 13 years old, and he says, if a middle school student turn in such a document today, be immediately he would immediately be sent to a counselor or detention facility.
The White Student Union. Why don't we have a white student union? This question satirizes the whole chapter about white people. Why white people love to ask questions. A white female student was confused about there being a black student union organization at Sidwell. It satirizes how in a predominantly white school, white students don't need to create a dedicated supportive space for themselves. They don't need to establish an organization to promote cultural understanding, community, and advocacy on campus because the entire institution already serves these functions for them by default. And that's why this follow-up quote with no one told her that the entire school was essentially a white student union. How to be the black friend. When you hear white people ask, why is it okay for black people to say the N word and not me? Those white people are missing a good black friend in their lives. This chapter satirizes the tools that or the roles of being a black friend to white people. This quote satirizes how having a black friend does not give you the license to abuse black cultural stereotypes. It specifically mocks white people who question why they can't use the N-word, suggesting that they need a good black friend to explain cultural boundaries. And overall, it shows how having a good black friend is not just one that will give you permission to use a slur. Rather, he is satirizing how a genuine understanding that comes from meaningful friendship will make someone less likely to ask such a question in the first place. How to speak for all Black people. You never know who among your non-Black friends and colleagues will end up writing Black characters for a TV show or movie, so answer carefully. The fate of the race depends on you. This quote satirizes being Black. You are a Black spokesperson by default. The Black spokesperson role is a manifestation of tokenism, where a person is expected to represent an entire demographic group based simply because of their identity. And being the Black spokesperson, you must answer for all Black as commented in the book. Know that by you, they mean all Black people everywhere and answer appropriately when you're presented with a question.
The chapter, Have You Ever Not Wanted to Be Black? Thurston has a quote saying, blacker than thou, blacker than all y'all, blacker than thou, blah, 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 on page 97. In this chapter, we see Thurston satirizing the norms of race-based social pressures and its absurdity to having to litmus test our own self-identities at times because of someone's race if they don't fit into one specific social norm in one specific group. This topic also underlines Thurston's ongoing theme of poking fun at the idea of an established competitiveness and often contradictory definitions of what people believe what it means to be Black. In the chapter, Can You Swim? Thurston has a quote saying, I complained loudly, but you never taught us how. They ignored my very reasonable protest and began flinging children into the depths. It was the Middle Passage all over again. Clearly, they were trying to kill us. On page 100. We see in this chapter Thurston beginning to satirize the propagated stereotypes of things Black people don't or can't do. In this chapter, Thurston and his guests share experiences that contradict these beliefs. The quote cleverly alludes to the historical tragedy, comparing being thrown into deep water with no instructions on how to swim to basically being drowning to death in a shipwreck. In the chapter, going back to Africa, we see Thurston continuing to reinforce his theme of connecting with his roots in Africa. In the quote, African nations seeking to boost tourism could probably convince at least a few American Blacks that the fountain of blackness existed within their borders, on page 106. This chapter satirizes the idea of Black people not traveling often enough or have often naive expectations of what traveling to Africa is like. He merges his own exaggerated expectations with the mundane reality of tourism culture. Thurston also pokes fun at the upper middle class's fixation on extending out names of common words like low carbon footprint accommodations for just simply the word camping.
For the chapter, but I don't want to cue people. Did the Black dude think that a white man would be more effective at getting me to compromise my non-murdered values on page 128 is a great example of how the chapter satirizes the stereotypes about Black people to be patriotic, the societal expectations of Black people to be loyal to the country that has not been loyal to their own citizens and hasn't respected their rights, along with the assumption that Black Americans should always support the U.S. forces, even if that goes against their values.
Thurston worked very hard to graduate from Sidwell and attend Harvard, where he started to try and figure out who he really was as a person, as Baratunde Thurston, and less of what it meant for him to be Black in Baratunde Thurston. In his journeys, he experienced a lot of discrimination in the small town of Cambridge, but ultimately, through his jobs, clubs, and extracurriculars such as the newspaper, he found his way. This is satirizing how a Harvard education speaks to the world in a way other non-Ivy League educations do not. Because of the name on his diploma, he was able to overcome odds and adversity, where now, even with his Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, he is an author, comedian, and even has his own TV series that streams on Apple TV, where he shows the world the lessons that his mother had taught him. The satire in How to Be the Black Employee is evident. There's the job that you have worked hard to be qualified for, and that is the one you get. Yet there's a second job, one that you're expected to do with no compensation, and that is being Black in this case. We see this as evident in the Salisbury University homepage, where people who are not able-bodied or of different races are exploited on the website to make this university seem more diverse than it truly is. That is what is happening in these jobs. People who are different are expected to be the diversity department and are expected to represent the entire Black community. It is an unfair pressure put on these people who are just trying to do a job like you and me, one that they are qualified for.
So in the chapter, How to Be the Next Black President, I grabbed the quote on the slide that I thought best depict this chapter because this is satirizing that as a presidential nominee, you could have all the qualifications to become the president, but the political party will use that nominee as an image that they're not racist and they have diversity within their political party. And as the face of the political party, they're still going to undermine your community while using your face to show that they have diversity and that they're able to have nominees that aren't just white, but are also Black.
In the chapter, how's that post-racial thing working out for you? Thurston makes the argument that post-racialism is a convenient excuse for white people to dodge fully addressing social inequalities for the purpose of maintaining the status quo. We see in the quote that white America is basically throwing everything under the rug and throwing out the idea of race because simply the show's over.
So to tie up the book, How to Be Black, it's a satire on society with the stereotypes and norms that we have pushed onto the Black community that now plays into their everyday life. And they have to act the stereotype or else they, quote, aren't Black. And the author helps satirize this by making the book, How to Be Black, kind of like a self-help book.